All right, group. Now we're going to be doing a little presentation on animal behavior and communication. This is something that you guys will be taking notes on. So if you have not already, pull up your note sheet that is in the first module and then fill it out as we go along. I will also be posting the PowerPoint separately in a document for you to refer back to. All right, so first let's talk about some terms. We talk about ethology, the study of animal behavior. Then we have behavior, an action performed in response to stimulus, and that's something that probably is a little more obvious to us. Communication, signaling between one animal to another, and we know that animals have different forms of communication, right? I mean, ants will use their antennas, but humans, we speak. So there are different types of communication with that. Habituation, learning based on habit. That's something that we see a lot in animals specifically. I mean, you talk about dogs, training them to sit, stay. You talk about cattle going into the milking parlor. That's all formed out of habit, right? So these animals kind of get into the groove of things and they know exactly what they're doing, and it's just like second nature to them. And then we talk about learning, the development of behaviors through experience, and that kind of goes with our habituation as well, right? We know what learning is. So let's move on. So when we talk about animal behaviors, that include resting, playing, courting, or reproducing, eating or foraging, territory marking, and offensive and defensive. All right, so let's dive into those a little bit more. So when we talk about our types of communication, we have auditory, and this is just going to kind of elaborate more on what I was talking about before with ants using their antennas and us speaking. But we have auditory, right? We use our sound. They use it for reproductive purposes, and they recognize the mark of other species to defend their territory. We can see that with deer and rut, right? They'll almost like growl at you, I guess. And so we see that in a lot of different species. So then we have olfactory. They breathe odor, urine, feces, and body odor play a role in the olfactory communication. Individual odor recognition and release of pheromones trigger immediate behaviors. So that's more using our scent, right? There's tactile. Touch is based on the social bonding. This kind of goes with our ants using their antennas, right? And then when we go into visual messages may be communicated by various means, such as color, posture, shape, and movement. So that kind of goes with too, if we have like a turkey and they fan out when they're trying to breed or to entice the female, that would be what we consider a visual type of communication. All right, so then we'll talk about behavioral factors. There's environmental. The immediate physical surroundings of include cleanliness, temperature, humidity, lighting, and noise, exercise, human contact, and social interaction, enclosure size, and access to food. So that was a lot of stuff, right? This is something that we will definitely talk more when we talk more about Temple Grandin, and some of you might already know who she is if you've taken Zig's animal science class. We are going to touch on her a little bit here in our vet science class as well, but basically it's what we talk about, right, the environment of the animal, and what do they see versus what we're seeing. I specifically remember a story of Temple Grandin saying that she was in a slaughter factory and they wanted to know why the cattle were not going into the correct area that they were supposed to. They just really struggled getting them in there. Well, she went down to the animal's perspective, right, got down into the gates and everything, and she was able to look around, and she saw that there was a paper towel fluttering in the distance a little bit, and that was what was startling the cattle, and that's why they didn't want to go into there. So all they did was remove the paper towel holder and put it somewhere else where they couldn't see it, and they didn't have any more issues. So that's a good example of what we talk about with our environmental factors. It's just each animal is different, obviously. Some are more skittish and some are more calm, and especially relates back to different species as well. But those are things that can affect the behavior of the animals. So if they're in a really bright place and they're more of an animal that does better when it's darker and quieter, they're going to react differently. Okay, so let's move on to health. an animal's state of physical and mental well-being can contribute to the normal and abnormal behaviors. So that kind of relates back to if an animal isn't feeling well, they may be a little more aggressive. If, let's say, you have a dog that broke its leg, it might be growling at you if you go and try to help it just because it's in pain, right? So health can play a factor on the way that animals behave as well. So you need to be a little more alert when you're around animals that are not feeling well. Experience, the way that an animal is raised affects its behavior. This is kind of goes with the nature versus nurture perspective. Early enrichment and exposure to common situations should be encouraged. So if your cat is not used to being held, okay, you don't normally pick it up and pet it. It just kind of does its own thing, and then you move somewhere and you're not allowed to have a cat. So then you give it to your buddy, and he is a person who needs to cuddle. He wants to cuddle with the cat. So he picks him up, and the cat's not used to it. They have never been around someone that likes to pick them up, and they're going to react. They are potentially going to react poorly, right? Because it's something that they're not used to. And on the flip side, if someone raises their cat and they spend a lot of time cuddling and picking it up and patting it, and then they pass it on to their buddy, and they like to do the same thing, then they're obviously going to react in a more positive manner, and they're going to have a positive response to that. So that kind of goes with the experience that the animal is exposed to. And then we talk about genetics. They play a role in the basic temperament and behavioral characteristics. Animal breeders have long recognized heritability of basic temperaments in familia. So if I know that my dog is kind of a grouch, he just doesn't he doesn't get along with other people besides me and my family, right? Well, let's say someone comes to you and they're looking for, I have a lab, okay? So they're coming to you and they're like, oh, I'd really like to breed my dog to your lab. I'm probably going to say, let them know up front, right, that my dog doesn't like other people and he doesn't have a very positive temperament to others. And that's not really typically a desirable trait to people, because they want to be able to take their dog out and take them on car rides and be around others. So there's some things to think about as we go into and we learn more about behavioral factors that can affect the animal's health and well-being. All right, so that is the end of this presentation. Pretty short and sweet, but there's a lot that goes into it. So just take some notes on the different behavioral and communication factors that go into it, and then you'll be able to use those and refer back to them as we talk more about Temple Grandin and the roles of animals in society and how to react with animals. I really wish that we could be around actual animals, but under the circumstances, we obviously can't. So we will do our best and we will try to learn our best through this. Let me know if you guys have any questions.